My hips are probably my weakest link, okay? At least for me speaking, but I know tons of other people that have the same problems. So I'm here with Ben Patrick, knees over toes guy. What's up, man?
Hey, man.
So, can you fix it? What's up? Like, okay, so I mean,
well, we can do something to improve.
So, yeah, I mean, I lack the hip mobility, but I have the pain that goes along with it, probably as a result of being overweight. And I think this is relatable because so many people that watch this channel are dealing with this, and a lot of times this hip tightness that's maybe not painful yet, but it's super tight, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about hips, so I'm going to defer to you on this.
Well, I like to think that the body was designed to work right. It's not going to last forever, but it was designed to work right. If we see little kids, they're so mobile. We all lose degrees of that. Being overweight doesn't help for any of these things. Having knee surgeries doesn't help. Sometimes people have even lower leg surgeries and they don't realize the immobilization, and we get really stiff. Then factor in how much time we spend sitting. Even when we're like kids, we start sitting in chairs when maybe, like Kelly's Tourette, you know who that is? Yep. He suggests, I thought it was such a good idea, that kids they could still be in class, but they could be on the floor, getting to like move around rather than being stuck in a chair. So this is just gonna look at how could we undo those effects from past injuries, too much sitting.
After today's video, there is a link down below for Thrive Market. Now that is going to get you 30% off your entire grocery order. Okay, so if you are doing paleo, maybe you're doing keto, maybe you're intermittent fasting, you're trying different things out. Wish there were grocery stores that were dedicated for what kind of diet you were doing, right? Well, Thrive Market is like that. You just sort by whatever diet type you're doing and you can shop. It opens up a grocery store for you right there digitally for whatever diet you're doing, which is super cool. But the best part is using that link, you save 30% off your entire grocery order, plus a $50 free gift because you're using that link through one of my videos. So check out Thrive Market after today's video to save some cash and get some awesome products.
So I will show an end goal so we can see what this would look like of mobility. And then we're gonna look at how someone could get into this. So a pretty good mark of mobility, if you think about my left hip right now, and then it adds in the right ankle, would be the ability of the front hamstring to cover the calf without the heel lifting, without the back knee touching the floor. Okay. So for me, that's my primary squat exercise. Okay. But someone could get into that by regressing each of those factors. Okay. So we had ankle mobility, we can remove that as a limiter. We had the hip flexor length, we're almost all too tight here. By elevating the front, that makes it totally different. This requires less hip mobility to get down. And then by removing the load, we can remove the strength and the pain aspect. Yeah. For men demonstrating this, it's better. That's why I show it from this side.
Yeah, for sure.
So right here, someone can regress the load. And when you're in this position, you're active through that back leg. So people spend a lot of time stretching, and I used to just tighten back up, tighten back up, tighten back up. When I actually started being under load actively, so with that back knee, rather than being here, you're gonna think to lengthen that back hip flexor. Use your hands. This is where I started. Okay. Why wouldn't I show where I had to start? Yeah, for sure. So my knees were so trashed, I had to start elevated and assisted. Now, as you warm up into that, then maybe go here and feel it out. So try 10 on each side.
This is unbelievable.
And go nice and slow. All right, so we're gonna get in here. Okay. He's assisted, front foot elevated, on the back toes. Now you're gonna think to stretch strengthen. So you're moving like this rather than straight up and down, exactly. You're getting full range of motion here, but you're active here. Yeah. Now push through there to come up, and I want you to stop when your shin is vertical. Okay. So often we stop there when we're going this way. I'm saying we're not going any further than that. Now we're going back down, because that's gonna keep the tension on the exercise. So your hip flexors are under load the whole time.
Big time, big time.
Yeah. Some people may have had success by doing, let's say, a Romanian deadlift with a stretch and noticing that their hamstrings get more flexible. Yeah. This is that concept but applied to the hip flexor. Interesting. It's a very powerful effect on the body when we can get load and stretch at the same time in a safe manner. It's extremely powerful to create actual lengthening effects versus just temporarily stretching it out.
Yeah, it always just retracts right back to where
Exactly. This is gorgeous. Your form is perfect, and you're getting a front leg workout. You can even see his VMO popping right there. So the most recent research on the VMO shows that when you go below 90 degrees, you do preferentially train the VMO. It's still a full quads exercise.
Okay.
You're not isolating the VMO. Besides, who would want weak quads?
Yeah.
So I get attacked for like, you can't isolate the VMO. Never said you can isolate the VMO. But when you go below this position, go ahead, it becomes more and more VMO relative to the rest of the quads to get out of that position.
Yeah.
Now for someone like me, 3 surgical alterations to my left knee, none to the right. This deep squatting felt horrible until I started doing this. But how would this feel good if I had to start assisted and elevated here?
Yeah.
So this was my route to this feeling good.
So can I do this with some weight added, or once I do body weight with this, should I be moving to the floor?
That's a good question, and it depends on the person. I'll tell you why. Someone as strong as you, to get to the floor, you're probably gonna need weight. You may never get to the floor without telling your body, hey, I need to be really strong and long through here. Because relative to the rest of your body, you might need some load. You have strong legs. So typically women who come from a yoga background can get to flat ground without ever loading. So you could, there's any number of progressions. Removing the hands, taking that away.
What about a weight vest?
Going lower, adding a weight vest, adding dumbbells in your hands. These are all progressions towards the same thing. So someone might be tighter, weaker in different areas. So I relentlessly coach this one, because if I can give someone ankle mobility, hip mobility, balance strength between sides, and I think there's something about unsticking those hip flexors for the lower back. But that's not the extent. We're gonna look at the other side of it. So,
I mean, believe it or not, I already feel springier just doing it.
Beautiful. I think that, if for anyone who's watched the first video we did with this exercise, this is the juice for my vertical jump. But boy, opening up those hips, I think that's what allows me to express that athleticism so easily. So that one is opening up the hips. And if you think about that Romanian deadlift I mentioned, if someone were to load a Romanian deadlift but not stop short and use it as a hamstring lengthening exercise, that's the most common one I've seen in gyms where people go, oh yeah, loading through a stretch, that really works for my hamstrings. Well, people ask me, like on my front split, it's just my split squat plus my Romanian deadlift. That's it. So I narrow it down to these simple things. It doesn't mean someone couldn't add a lot more, but I feel like that's a powerful one to add to your routine. And then if you look at squat mobility, it's not just the split squat, it's also those adductors. So now we're looking at the other part. So you can create squat mobility. If you are now lacking in the adductors, or in the one I just showed, this is not going to be as stable of a position for the back.
That's how I end up.
In life. So people who are more like this, it's just undue stress. So here, just about anyone can get into this. The dumbbells stop you short and you can let them go. So similar to how I showed the loaded split squat, like I showed the end goal first, we'll look at the end goal here. These are the ones that if I just post this, it looks really scary for people, but then you see how gentle it is to start. So here, lowering my torso down to the bench without rounding my back. I'm directly loading my adductors in a stretched position. So this is gonna take my adductors through a full stretch. And if you look at this from a side angle to the camera, this exercise, more than any other, brings my torso closer to my thighs. Notice the angle between thigh and torso. We're like an even line right here. So I don't do typical squats or deadlifts, but I do ass to grass, ATG split squats, and I do abs to bench, seated good mornings. And that's how I go into a squat position and spring up and dunk the basketball. Those two exercises. And I don't do any other mobility drills for these areas. There's, you may have seen like this kind of like world's greatest stretch where people get into these positions. That's probably really good stuff. If someone likes that, well, I'm just doing that but with load. So try this with dumbbells first. So you'll sit on the bench. Now your ankles are gonna be in front of your knees. That's gonna actually take the quads out of it some. Now we're knees behind toes now. Both, you wanna be great in both positions, that's it. And now, good, go ahead and pick up the dumbbells. this is going to be a really light stretch. But by keeping your back straight as you go down, you're going to try to stretch those adductors.
I mean, I can already feel that.
Light stretch?
They're so tight, yeah.
Do 5 or 6 reps just to loosen it up, because we're going to look at the different ways to apply this. So you're now doing this stretch for the adductor that you're doing with weight. So it's a loaded, this is like a loaded adductor.
Could I do this again, like as a sort of a activation prior to like deadlifting or anything like that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I feel like it's allowing me to hinge where I'm so stiff. I have to think hard about hinging. Like I really have to think about it. And this is a little more natural, being in a seated position. Like I have no option but to hinge.
Yeah, it takes other factors out of it.
Yeah.
It's an isolation exercise for your mobility and strength in a hinged position. And I actually think that any of the stuff I do could be used as a supplement to any other common fitness things. I just use it as a supplement to play basketball.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I would use the same exact stuff as a supplement to deadlift or to squat or to Olympic lift. Think about like Olympic weightlifters. Yeah. They've used these 2 exercises to improve their mobility toward the Olympic weightlift.
Interesting.
Now, I do want to show something. If you've got a few more reps in you, a bigger dumbbell is going to stop you short more. Okay. So there's no exact perfect recipe on this, because as you get stronger, remember ankles in front of knees?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And then should I be closer to the edge here so I'm not hitting?
Whatever's comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks good. So notice this is going to kind of cut off the stretch some.
Yeah, true.
So,
but I can always like.
There's ways around it. You could elevate the feet, but ideally you get to a point where your back feels stable and strong, and you can use a bar. Yeah. And you can stretch down to the bench. That's good. So the dumbbell is the safest, because you can let go. This isn't a good position to fail with the bar on your back.
True, yeah.
I wouldn't treat any of the stuff I've shown the way you would treat a bench press going to failure. You could, but you're using it to build up resilience. That's good. So you're stretching the adductors, you're getting a back workout.
Actually, yeah, I feel my thoracic opening a little bit too.
Yeah. Okay. So those 2 are my foundation for hip mobility. Not that there's not a lot more someone could add. Yeah. But those are really foundational, and you're getting metabolic work out of it. I don't do any drills. For me, this is my form of exercise. You've already seen with the sled, the reverse step up, the ATG split squat, the abs extension seated good morning. You've already seen 4 of, maybe a dozen things I'll just do the rest of my life.
Interesting, like I'm in really good cardiorespiratory shape, and even that gets me breathing. And it's interesting because like tissue perfusion, when you're actually forcing blood into a stagnant area, you're having this new, you're forming capillaries, like you're literally forming blood flow, and like you're forming vessels. And that actually, the heart has to work harder because it's working against basically external pressure, right? So you know they can use that as somewhat of a barometer where like, okay, well, clearly this is like stiff, stagnant area that's not getting a lot of blood. And one of the things we're going to talk about in another video is protein synthesis and how nutrition ties in with that. I will add, just to add to his genius here, that when you do something like that and you're training in like this heavy sort of stretch under load, like protein synthesis is going to be jacked up to an all-time high, because the actual, I don't want to say trauma, I hate that word, but the sort of micro trauma that's happening at a muscle level is signaling everything that protein synthesis, we need to repair. So even though this may not seem like much, you want to really, really stack up the protein after something like this, because you have all signals saying, okay, grow and repair, and also build new vessels and be able to bring blood flow.
Yeah, and while I have people here, I can explain how I do my own program, really simply. So I typically do 3 exercises a day. And so the first one would be sled. So I used to spend half an hour just warming up. Now I spend no time warming up. I just start sledding. And I start sledding nice and slowly. And 5 minutes later, you got a little sweat going. And then Monday, Thursday, I'll take a knee exercise and a hip exercise. That's it. And I'm really trying to master the quality of those motions. And then Tuesday, Friday, I superset an upper body exercise with a calf or a tibialis exercise, which goes back to Bob Gaida, who was a natural Mr. Olympia like 40, 50 years ago. And the idea is that he would have people say on a bench press, and then instead of resting from that, he would switch around and train the tibialis. And he called it peripheral heart action training. He would try to pair, now, whether this was something where the heart, like if you had, if you did, let's say a calf exercise, you might pair that with like a lat exercise, where like it's like the farthest 2 points in the body. Whether or not that works, I am a basketball player. I want to dunk till I'm 50 years old. So I make myself earn my upper body. So for every set of upper body, I have to do something for my calves or my tibialis. That's really why I do it. But it keeps, there's not a ton of rest involved, and people are surprised. A common session would be like sled, ATG split squat, seated good morning. That would be a common session in my system. And people be surprised, you might even be a little nauseous even with rest periods. You're using a lot. So a normal lunge versus all of a sudden now you're contracting here, you're, like you mentioned with this contractile thing on the sled. So you're able to explain some of the things that I haven't even tried to explain, but you're contracting a lot of different things at once. And then there's your workout. I used to do 10 different things just in my mobility warm-up. Now I'm doing 3 exercises a day, and yet I can do the front splits and stuff like that. So it's still mind-boggling even for me how powerful adding the strength training and the mobility into these kind of movements, progressing them over time, makes your tissues resilient and gives you a ton of benefits.
No, it's definitely wild. And the other thing, which we could probably say for another day, is just the idea behind you know, the neurological factor here. And like a lot of times the heavy breathing, the exhaustion that's coming from doing a new movement pattern like this is we forget that, you know, it's 2% of our body weight, but 20% of our metabolic demand is in our brain. And when it's working hard, having to send all these different action potentials to these new things, that is a huge metabolic load, right? So however we can assist our brain from a nutrition standpoint, which I have plenty of videos on in that world, like how do we develop new neural pathways so that this becomes a natural firing pattern for us, so that we're not having to think about it when we're in the middle of a deadlift, right? Like we're not having to think about, oh, I got to keep my, you know, I can't let my knees buckle in. Like all these things you have to think about sort of become natural and become just a simple motor movement. So where can everyone find you?
Knees over toes guy. Try to put out as much helpful stuff as I can. Can't thank this guy enough. Today's a dream come true. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.